Yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for your patience. Long time coming. Yeah, so here we are on the good foot here. You are at the Vinyl Revival event, Matthew Marvel Dance Music Collection, brought to you by Hennepin County Library's Vinyl Revival program, which is paid for by a generous donation from the Minnesota Cultural Arts Foundation. So yeah, Vinyl Revival is a Hennepin County Library program that is all about. What's up? Nothing. Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So Vinyl Revival is a Hennepin County Library program that was established a few years ago to highlight the dormant vinyl collection at the Minneapolis Central Library, which at that time was probably roughly 20,000 albums strong. It had been kind of out of circulation, since the dawn of the CD. But we've been making efforts through a team of dedicated library staff to catalog that and make it accessible for people to use. Now there's a listening room at the downtown Minneapolis library that you can drop in and listen to the collection. And we've worked with local artists and music lovers to come up with different online programs and in-person experiences around vinyl records and culture and also to highlight just some local musicians' work. So some of the programs that we do typically revolve around an album encounter where we would just talk about a specific album, or we might have an artist like kind of talk about their work and maybe pick out some albums to talk about. But tonight is a first. This is a unique thing because we had a very unique thing happen. We were gifted a very amazing and very large record collection, about 7,500 plus pieces of just really amazing music, the kind of music that we didn't really have in our collection. That most of our collection is like, I'd say half of it is classical. So we just didn't really have a lot of, soul or funk or R&B or hip hop or disco, or even really that much rock or pop, really. And now the library has a 7,500 plus piece collection available for you to listen to. And hopefully, we're working on the future of how this collection can be used in different ways. But at this time, you can listen to it in the library. Yeah, so this is from the estate of Matthew Marvel. And I imagine several people who are on this call knew Matthew. He was born and raised in Minneapolis, and was a DJ and a kind of a producer, re-editor of sorts. He liked to make mixes of songs and take the best part of the song and emphasize that and cut out all the parts that weren't so great and try to make them even more interesting and make them more like maybe fun to play at a dance party. So Matthew had a record label called Fever Zone Records that he put out these re-edits on. But of course, he had a huge record collection, and that's what the Matthew Marvel Dance Music Collection is. And so tonight we brought together some of Matthew's close friends and family to reminisce and talk about who Matthew was and what his aesthetic was, and his passion for music. And we're going to get to hear records from this collection. And I do hope that you all, especially some of the folks I know knew Matthew, maybe share a story or a question. You can, I said this earlier, you can raise your hand, touch the hand icon on the top, or type in the chat if there's anything you want to bring up, and we will have you unmute your mic and talk. Or if you'd rather not talk, you could just type it out and we can read it for you. So we are, I'm going to introduce, or I'd like to introduce some of our co-hosts here tonight. We've got Ivy Gawker. Go ahead and wave. Mike Gunther.
Hello.
I better unmute. I'm Mike. Hi. Nice to see so many familiar faces.
And Graham Watling. Oh, sorry, Mike.
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. And of course, Graham is here too.
I heard that, Mike. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We also have to say Graham is coming from Spain. There might be another representative in the United Kingdom out here tonight as well. I may have noticed in some chat, but yes, Graham is from Spain, so we're worldwide, beaming out worldwide here tonight, and I am thrilled.
Is that Shane who's in the UK?
Shaw.
Shaw, you want to say hi?
And Shaw, I'm not sure if he's in the UK now, but Matthew DJ'd with him a lot in Minneapolis. So he knew Matthew from way back.
Hi.
Hi, Aaron.
How's it going? Fun.
Oh, thank you.
We're just getting more people to join.
I was trying to get him to send me the link so I can listen to it upstairs.
So yeah, now that we're all introduced, so Matthew seemed to be from. I met Matthew a few times. I did have an opportunity to meet him back in like 2006 or something when I used to DJ at the 331 Club, and I met Ivy and Kim back then, and he came along, and I invited him to DJ with me once, maybe twice. So I maybe met him 2 or 3 times. But I knew that he loved disco music when I met him and talked to him at the bar. And I do recall talking to him about, God, I think we might have talked about the Eagles. I think he really liked that kind of like AOR kind of soft rock, yacht rock kind of thing. And I think we had a bar stool conversation about that I'm sure was really deep and intelligent. But yeah, so what's up with, like, how do we want to start with this? Like, why was Matthew so into disco, people? Like, what's up with Matthew and disco? Maybe this is like a Mike Gunther one. You catch your child there. Hey.
Where it began with Matthew and disco? Well, I met Matthew in the 6th grade, and so music was really important to him. Steve Halverson's here too, Matthew's father.
Hi guys.
And,
Hi, Steve.
So record, I know I'm going to bounce this off Steve a little bit, but record albums and exploring music and learning more about music, and it was an active experience. It wasn't a passive experience, and it was peeling back layers and finding new things. And Matthew was really good at that, and he obviously grew up in an environment where that kind of exploration was fostered. So just collecting records, it was a really normal thing. It was he wouldn't just see band names or lead guitar players or singers. He would see producers. He would see you can see my mouth but not my eyes.
He would see your mouth, but not your eyes.
Yeah, there we go. Now I can see all of your face, Mike.
Oh, I was too close to my camera. Whoa.
There
Okay.
we go. Sorry,
he would look deep in the credits, and he would remember a lot of things, and he would always he was able to mentally to cross-reference that stuff when he was shopping, and so he never stopped. Like when we were kids, we listened to Dr. Demento, and that evolved into to listening to The Cure, and Kraftwerk was a really huge unifying force for the two of us in the 7th and 8th grade. And I mean, as a tribute to him, and I don't know if I hadn't met him, I don't know if I would have explored music as much as I have in my life, because I don't know if I would have realized how much fun it is.
Yeah, computer love, boy, that launched him on Kraftwerk. Yeah.
Absolutely. Steve, if I can digress, talk about you for a moment, because I find this fascinating. In the late 1950s, early 1960s, you were living on the Iron Range and listening to AM radio at night and listening to R&B stations in Memphis and New Orleans and getting R&B and soul albums that you couldn't even get probably in Minneapolis, getting them sent up to you in the range. I mean,
yeah, that is true. You know, a name that comes up, a city, you know, Del Rio, Texas. Well, we listened to XERF 50 times the broadcast signal strength of any US station legally. That was one thing I did. But because of the air base where I grew up, I was a paper boy there, and I got exposed to blues, jazz, a whole lot of things. And I guess in a different way, Bob Dylan did too. He only lived 32 miles away from me, but he listened, as it was, to some of these same stations. So that started some things.
Yeah, I know when we were starting to have the conversations about doing this program, and you know, disco was sort of inextricable from like Matthew's musical outlook, but I think his definition of disco was much more expansive than what we typically think. I mean, and that's maybe why the collection I think is going to be called the Dance Music Collection, because disco is maybe a frame of mind that includes a lot of things that you wouldn't call disco, but I think for Matthew it was just like, if it's got a beat and you can dance to it, we're gonna put it under this umbrella, and I mean, but when I say we, I mean he he was gonna play it, he was gonna celebrate it, and like Mike was saying, he was like a real scholar of the liner notes. So he would, you know, find a producer he liked and then track that person through and listen to everything they ever had a hand in. And I think that's part of how his definitions of dance music became so expansive, because he was really following the people as much as he was like following the music.
Excellent. He had a very good ear for what was good and also what was not good. And he had a sense of that sort of aesthetic. And that's terribly important. And he was, you know, even when he was as young as 5 years old, I would take him to record sales. And as he would say, "Dad, are we going fishing this weekend?" And I'd say, "Yeah, we are." And he'd say, "You mean fishing for records?" Right. And I would say, we're going to get us some British vinyl, which we did then. And then, so when he was age 6, he already had been to a Pink Floyd concert.
Yeah, he always said his first concert was A Flock of Seagulls when he was 5.
That's true.
And he was proud of that.
Right. So yeah, that was good, and several other British groups followed, like Jethro Tull. Okay, so this was terribly early, but I thought this guy seems to really get into this stuff, and I played a lot of disco, such as I had. With volume way up, and me throwing him around. So yeah, he was, especially that Donna Summer song, "I Feel Love." So when they'd get into this interlude part, that's when I could probably double the volume, and it just bounces you, and it just strange thing, but it sounds wonderful. And his eyes were, you know, glowing, I guess I could say. So there was a lot of fun with that record, by the way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I first met him in Minneapolis. And, you know, I was talking to people about, you know, how I was dating this guy, Matthew, and they would say, oh, he's into disco. And like, like it was kind of a dirty word, like, oh, watch out for that guy. He's into disco, which, you know, the subtext there is like, nobody likes disco. You're not supposed to like disco. And I always really appreciated about him that he was so like loud and proud about it. And, you know, as was so often the case, he was, you know, way ahead of everybody else in terms of like unearthing good music. And I remember he got really into ESG, the three sisters from the Bronx who had this sort of, I don't know, what would you call it, like punk, disco punk sort of music. And I remember he shared that with me and my friends who were in a band together. And we were all like, yeah, that's okay, I guess. And then, you know, like 5 years later, we finally came around. We were like, oh my God, this is awesome. It just, everybody was like behind the curve compared to him.
There's something I'll step into here, Ivy. There was something about him and music, and him finding great uh, emotion in music, and really feeling a lot of things that weren't like, coming from my personal perspective, it was always lyrics based stuff. Like I would emote with lyrics, and he was emoting with the rhythms and all sorts of things. Because I remember, I don't know if you remember this story. He did some kind of art project book in high school, and they had an artist in residence who came, and there was a point where he was telling me about this once, and I'd forgotten about it, but he he had everybody go around the room and say something that they were proud of or something that they loved, and Matt said, I mentioned my book to him, and he listened to me talk about my book and how proud I was of my book, and then the guy turned it into this improvisational piece on the trumpet, and it really it really moved Matthew. And it was the I figured out just today who was it was Hannibal Marvin Peterson, or Hannibal Lacumbe. He's a pretty famous free jazz trumpet player. He played on a record that Matt and I used to do. We did some audio collage kind of stuff, like messing with scratched records, like letting records skip type of thing, um, and recording them and trying to mix them together with with cassette decks. But we knew who he was, and it was that was the kind of thing that was I found really amazing about Matthew, was that he was really feeling the music as kind of this ethereal, nebulous thing. I I felt like yeah, it was a new way, like seeing how he experienced it changed the way I experienced it. That makes sense.
Yeah, Mike, weren't you saying something about listening to Cure songs with him, and him like making a big
Oh
deal
yeah.
about the different like mix of the Cure
Mm-hmm.
song?
Yeah, he needed Close to Me on the album cut and the 12-inch cut, because one had the horns and the other didn't have the horns, and he was picking up and noticing stuff like that. Um, I've been thinking a lot about him because of this coming up, and I even just about him noticing subtle differences and wanting to customize things and make things his own, or maybe how he maybe not his own, but how he thought they would be best presented. I remember when we first met in the 6th grade, so we would have been 11 years old. Yeah, probably 11 years old, and so we were kind of just on the verge of leaving playing with toys, and he had He-Man figures, and on the molded plastic muscles on the He-Man figures, there'd be little cuffs and furry boots and that type of thing. He had taken paint and he had customized it. He had painted all the things that were in the plastic figure sculpt that he didn't have enough detail for him, and he brought all that detail out, and he really made it. Yeah, I remember being kind of. I'd always noticed those things and I was interested in them, but I never, he took it to the next level. He actually made made the figure the way he thought it actually should be, which really ends up kind of translating into, you know, what he did as an artist and as a, you know, in music, with music, and it was really awesome.
I see Shaw's commenting a lot in the chat, and maybe his audio isn't working, but he mentioned Matthew making lots of mixes, which I think was also, you know, he had the music he loved, but he also had a bit of a mission to be like, I need to share this with you, like you need to hear this also. So like, you know, making mix CDs for people was sort of, you know, that was one of his grooves. And I just got to share this because I brought them out. You probably won't be able to see them very well since my camera is small, but this was for my birthday one year. He had 2 albums pressed. Like he made all these mixes and had an actual record made of two different records, and they're both it's called Mind Blower. There's 2 volumes of it, and it's all songs that I had over the years been commenting that I didn't think were long enough. I would be like, oh, I love this song, I wish it wasn't over. So he made new edits rather, of all of these different songs I like, to make them each like, you know, it's 3 minutes longer or something. But and then he wrote fake liner notes for it. So you can kind of see here, he was left-handed, and he had the most distinctive handwriting ever, and just the funniest sense of humor. And the really great thing about this, I mean everybody here who knows him knows this, but I'll say it anyway. Like, so he had this sense of humor that tracked through like all aspects of his life. Like so many, you know, there was a part of his brain that was just always picking up references and making weird connections and then making jokes based on those connections. And so he wrote up fake liner notes for these albums, and they're credited to David Morpheus. And David Morpheus, if I remember this correctly, David Morpheus is the pen name of the actor Michael McKean, you know, who was in Spinal Tap and, you know, Laverne and Shirley. When Michael McKean was a kid, I think his dad was a record executive, and Michael McKean would write liner notes for records using the pen name David Morpheus. And so, like in Matthew's universe, like all of this stuff is at play. You know, like anything he told you, like had all of these crazy layers to it. And you know, the more you got to know him, the more you could tease out the meaning of those layers. But it was still like a life project to kind of make sense of everything that was going on in his brain. Did we lose Graham?
Did we lose Graham? I don't know. Steve, are you about to say something?
I'm still here.
Oh, I see your square lighting up. Yeah, hopefully Graham can come back. I think we might have lost him. Well, let's see.
James,
here.
would this be a good point to play a song, and I could show some of the slides?
Yes. Let's do a little slideshow here. Okay. I think we're gonna do a song from a Brooklyn adjacent group called the Crown Heights Affair. We know that Matthew and Ivy lived in Brooklyn together for a good chunk of time.
Okay, and while that's playing, I'll pull up a slideshow with some images of Matthew too.
Does it sound okay?
You guys see these slides?
I can see it.
Nice pictures.
Is that at the 331?
No, this is actually our wedding. This is that
Oh,
The
yeah.
place that Le Cirque Rouge had downtown on 4th, right next to oh, the place had such an awful name. A place called like Wild Nightlife, something weird like that. Maybe someone else will remember.
Oh man. Yeah, I remember that place that the Cirque Rouge did.
Yeah.
This is in Nevada. This is just evidence that no matter where we went record shopping. This
Ah,
is at the 331 Club.
nice picture. Whoa.
This is Mike and Matthew after Mike got off the Appalachian Trail. Matthew and Graham doing their record exchanges. This is karaoke hour or house.
That must be Gino.
Yep, that's famous Gino. Gino's on credited on some of Matthew's releases. He's a collaborator. This is at a record store out on Long Island with Kevin. I think Kevin's here in the chat too. Matthew singing I Wear My Sunglasses at Night for karaoke.
Holy heart.
And then these are the labels of some of Matthew's releases, which I think we'll get to hear a little bit of later tonight.
Note that it says by Marvel and Gino.
Yeah. And I'll mention that the Matthew's releases that he made himself are all listed on Discogs, the record collecting website. And there's comments from people there who don't know Matthew, who have just stumbled upon these records, and they're like, I'm trying to find out information about Marvel and Gino. Like, who was Gino? What did Gino do? And I recently commented like Gino was the cat. He did everything. Credit Gino with the whole thing.
That's great. You responded on Discogs to them?
I did, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I told the guy about tonight's program too, so maybe he'll show up.
I hope so. Mike, you want to share some stories about your guys' trips to New York together?
Oh, yeah. Well, we were talking in one of the meetings. Speaking of great record trips, I see Pete Eckholtz here, and Pete, hi. If you want to elaborate, but I recall you and Matthew in maybe 1997 or 98 going on a really big road trip where you just looking for records. Maybe I've romanticized it, where you slept in a park in Philadelphia, just driving around looking for record stores and trying to find great records that you couldn't find in Minneapolis. Is that true?
Well, I don't think we ever were in Philly, but we definitely went to Chicago, and we stayed with Shannon. And hi, Shannon.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I mean that was we were just going all over Chicago, and Matthew had he had already done research, and he knew all the places to go. And we went to some far off places too. Like we went out to Cicero, which is super, I don't know, outside Chicago, concrete. I don't know. I don't know why we were out there, but we definitely found a great record store out there. And that's at that time in our lives, we were always going to Cheapo and in all the record stores in Minneapolis a lot. And so that was just kind of our normal, that was just one of the ways we hung out was, and, a big way we hung out was just going to record stores. And then we went to Chicago. I think Chicago's the only city we went to together other than New York. And, but I mean, it was all super memorable and just funny and just quirky, classic Matthew, like you're talking about. But I mean, I knew Matthew I grew up with Mike in the same area. So my brother was Matthew's age, and I was like a year or two older. And so I saw Matthew when we were like in our 20s or late teens in Minneapolis, and I just walked up to him and said, hey, and then we found out that we both were into records, and then we just started from there. But we kind of had different styles. Like I was collecting rap and pop, and Matthew was more into like funk and dance. And so it was cool. I learned a whole lot of about records and music from Matthew, and just reading records. But it was always funny to just go and look at records with him, because it was like he would just pull up a record and he'd be like, the record cover would be so weird and strange, and he would just he would pick that up and just start talking about what a weird record cover that was. And it was just I kind of hadn't gotten to that point yet with records, but that was kind of how advanced Matthew was with it. He was even if he wasn't interested in the record, for the music of it, he was picking up on the artwork and just what was going on graphically about stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good point, and it reminds me of something I did want to mention. Just I don't think he was obsessive about having the original issue of records, first release or whatever. He just wanted to have the music, but I think he did really respect a piece of vinyl as an object, and I think he had that mentality that I think a lot of thrift store shoppers have, where if you encounter something that seems kind of weird and amazing, you feel a personal responsibility to buy it because you're I don't know if there's anybody else in the world who's going to appreciate this thing the way that I do, so I better buy it and bring it home and take care of it. So I mean, he was such a collector through and through in that way. I mean, records was definitely his major passion, but there was all kinds of weird stuff he would collect because that was his way of being in the world, was just finding things he appreciated and then bringing them into his home.
Yeah, I remember he was he was one of the first people. I've heard other people talk about this, but he was the first person I heard talk about how offended he was by destroying records. And what he talked about was that event in Chicago where they burned all these disco records at a Chicago Cubs game or something, as an event or something. And Matthew was definitely opposed to that whole thing. And I didn't have any opinion on it at the time. I didn't even know about it. Matthew is the one who told me about it, but he definitely did not think that was okay to be I mean, it's very clear to all of us now, burning a bunch of disco records is what a waste. But Matthew knew that, and he was just he did not like that.
Not surprisingly, he was pretty tuned into all of these historical, contextual milestone things of this.
Absolutely.
And I hear when you go traveling, you'd want to stop at, places stop at, Stonewall where, where the riots went down, or stop at where this particular disco was in New York, or stop at this bar that was mentioned in the Steely Dan song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he knew so much stuff, and he was a walking encyclopedia for sure.
Yeah, Mike, that might be a good cue to play, or rather, James is the one who has the records, to play that Black Cow song, since
Steely Dan Black Cow.
We went to Rudy's bar because Steely Dan mentioned it in the song. So.
Yep, it's what a cool bar too. but a lot. It very much like his too. It wasn't just. It was kind of the typical. Well, it's Hell's Kitchen, I guess, right? Across the neighborhood, but just sort of that pre-Giuliani New York, like we grew up. At least I grew up watching on TV.
Is this coming through?
We found those places.
Saw you in Rudy's. You were very high. You were high. It was a crying disgrace. They saw your face on the counter by your keys. Was there forgotten number and your remedies? One of these surely will screen out the sorrow. But where are you tomorrow? I can't cry anymore. You run around, you run around. Break away, just when it seems so clear that it's over now. Drink your big black cow and get out of here. Down to Green Street, there you go, looking so irate, and they tell you so. You should know how all the pros play the game. You change your name like a gangster on the run. You will stagger home to your precious one. I'm the one who must make everything right. Talk it out till daylight. I don't care anymore why you run around. Break away, just when it seems so clear that it's over now. Drink your big black cow and get out of here.
Can you hear me? I was just pointing out the great story about Mike Veek from the current owner of the Saints, who was also involved in the disco demolition night along with Steve, whatever his name is, the Teenage Radiation guy. And yeah, they were, it was kind of like really just a sort of like a racist cultural moment of burning all black artists or whatever. So sad time in history, but our man Matthew was well aware of this history before it was shared with us in the Bee Gees documentary.
Yeah.
So who did we just hear?
That is Steely Dan, Black Cow, the opening track off of Asia.
Sounded like Steely Dan. Yeah, I got it. Nice.
Yeah,
Fun
talking
fact.
about this. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just wanted to share a fun fact about the Steely Dan album. The cover art was designed by Phil Hartman. Who knew? I bet Matthew knew.
Mystic
Yeah.
Country. Phil Hartman also did America's Greatest Hits.
What do you mean? Like he produced it, or he did the cover
Well, he
for
did
it?
the cover art for America's Greatest Hits, which I think America would be in the Mystic Country genre.
Oh,
Am I right?
absolutely.
You can
Yeah.
do magic. He made a
Oh
re-edit.
yeah.
So, who's aware of what Mystic Country is? Can anybody, like Mike and Ivy and Graham? You guys like can't raise your hands. Does anybody else know about Mystic Country?
I see Kim raising a hand.
All right, Kim. Has anybody ever heard of Rare Groove?
Mm.
Has anybody ever heard of I don't know, Left Field or I don't know. So people come up with these names, right? It's like the DJs, they kind of like they find a sound that they like and they come up with a new genre for something that maybe already is a genre, but it's like they've kind of recontextualized it, right? Balearic, yes, Balearic for for that cosmic disco sound of the Ibiza Islands or whatever. Right. So Matthew, being the DJ and music-minded fellow, yeah, Rare Groove Acid Jazz came from the U.S. The UK DJs. Yeah. So he had his own kind of macro genre that included. I think a lot of people would call this stuff yacht rock today. They probably called it AOR for adult-oriented radio in the 80s. But still, he found a certain sound that, it's not as simple as just being AOR or whatever, right? It's mystic country. And that includes songs by artists that you may know, like America or the Eagles. Now seems like a great time to play. Let's play some mystic country.
Yeah.
I've got a track here by a fellow kind of one-hit wonder by the name of Walter Egan. I don't know if anybody knows this song.
I do. Yeah.
Recognize it, but
It's one hit, but what a hit,
let's play a little bit. Why not? It's fun. So all this stuff, I think of this stuff as being disco adjacent. It's like it came out at the same kind of time, and it's got that kind of the element of the studio was kind of, parallel. The disco music was kind of, approaching these instruments and these sounds, and rock music was also taking that, and pop music was taking that, and they were crossing over, right? And it was very adult, and it was very of the radio, so adult-oriented radio. I guess it's not like the kid radio, right? This is for the adults. So let's play a little bit of Mr. Egan. There he is. So I also want to point out that this record collection that's available for you to explore at the downtown Minneapolis Central Library has all been cataloged meticulously with a very lovely little sticker on here that you might have seen earlier that says in the font of Future Shock, the great Toffler novel. It's got a little handwriting on there, and I hear that Ivy's mom, who's a real trooper and a sweetheart, went through 7,000 albums that were in her place and affixed this sticker to every single individual record. And not only that, but then wrote a box number from the box that it was assigned to. There's 97 boxes. And then wrote a number.
Well,
the records were in there.
Yeah, I mean, my mom didn't do all of them. But Kim is on the call here too. It was my mom and my sister Kim and I. This was our project one winter. Basically, was just to spend all day going through the records, looking them up on Discogs, writing the record label on there. And I don't think my mom, she did it because she could see that there was no way we were going to get it done in time. So she was like, "All right, I guess I'm going to help you do this." But it was pretty funny because a lot of the records were, I think, pretty offensive to her, like, Midwestern Catholic mother sensibility. I mentioned this earlier. There's like a bunch of recordings by some kind of, I don't even know who they are, some group called Crazy Penis. But it seemed like it always fell to my mom to look those ones up. And we would often be working in different rooms, but I could hear her in the other room just go, "Oh God." Like whenever she encountered something that was just a little bit beyond the pale. So yeah, shout out to Mary Anderson for putting in some long hours on cataloging this.
Now I told you so, you ought to know.
Yeah, Magnet and Steel. We played that when he was 7, and he loved that song.
Oh man,
You're so close now, I can't let you go.
Yeah, my dad used to play America and his greatest hits on our parties, so I have a special place for that one too. Mystic Country is like stuff for fathers and sons.
My secrets to reveal. For you are a magnet, and I am the speaker. I can't hope that I'll You're a woman who's lost to your song, but the love that I feel is so strong, and it can't be wrong. With you, I'm not shy to show the way I feel. With you, I might try my secrets to reveal. For you, I'm a magnet.
Hey, Graham, are you still here?
Yeah, the steel. Yeah.
I hear you loud and clear, James. Talk to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, hey, buddy.
We don't see you anymore, Graham.
What?
Or I
You
don't.
don't. You don't see me. No, I'm here. My computer crashed and I was completely gone, and it took a long time to get back. It was crazy.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah. It completely froze, and it was like dot 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 dot, and then I had to turn the computer off. And
I don't know if everybody heard, but Graham is in Spain. It's like 2 a.m. there.
Right.
Graham, do you wanna play some music that's a connection here with you and Matthew?
Sure. Yeah. You know, maybe in the interest of priorities, maybe I should play the remix he did of some music of mine, and then if I get around to the records, then great. But maybe just in case, I start first with the remix straight from Matthew, straight off my computer, and not from the turntable. What do you think, James? Anybody? Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. I've got some of his re-edits too, and I think we should definitely, as we get into the final stretch of this this program, I think we should definitely devote some attention to the Fever Zone label and his re-edits.
Right. Well, okay.
Some of which are re-edits of Mystic Country songs.
To be clear, the up and coming Fever Zone Records production was to be, everything had been re-edits up to that point, but this in particular, I actually have to reroute a couple cables, is a remix of some music that I made, but which he represented in a completely remixed format.
It might be good to explain the difference between a remix and a re-edit.
Sure.
For the lay people.
Okay, look, if I had 30 multi-tracked tracks of recording that came together to make a song, those individual tracks, whether they are guitar, voice, bass guitar, drums, or some other sonic element, can be remixed. And that's exactly what Matthew did on this song, because he only really took my vocals and a couple bass guitar elements, and he remixed them to pretty much his own original elements, which included his synthesizer elements and other drum elements that probably came out of his computer. So the remix included original reworkings by Matthew, which included his original sonic input into the remix. But now that I've said it, I actually have the record player set up right now. So James or anybody, maybe it's best if you waste a little time before I get to the thing, or I should play a record first. What do you think?
I can play. I've got a really cool talking about like some of the final Fever Zone things. This let me grab it. Our Matthew Marvel Dance Music Collection downtown features some really unique stuff. This is a acetate, which is like a pre-pressing of a record. So I think there's probably only one. It's got a little sticker on it, like that he made. It's just in handwritten. It says Disco Promocional, like with a Z kind of. I don't know. I was trying to make it got an Italian thing going on. Bongo Disco System, and it says the songs are Disco Stranger, Private Line, and then the other side says Blood Street, and then Tusk. So I'll decode that for you. Disco Stranger is an Eagles song called Disco Strangler. And then Private Line is a song called, an Eagles song called On the Border. The B-side, Blood Street, amusingly, is a line from a Doors song called Peace Frog. So Blood Street is Peace Frog, and then Tusk is, well, it's what you think. It's Fleetwood Mac's Tusk. So these are all re-edits, a little bit different than the remix. What he's doing is he's taking the song and just extending certain parts. So if there's like a break where there's like a kind of catchy, funky part or whatever, he'll loop it so it goes longer and longer. And then if there's like an annoying part, like on Peace Frog, Jim Morrison, he does some dumb stuff that's embarrassing, right? He stops the whole song. He's like, oh, there was like, you know, the Native American walked down the street or whatever. And he's got no business saying stuff like this. He just sounds like stupid saying it. So he just cut that part out. But the song's pretty cool. It's got this like funky part, but it's like, it's way better on this re-edit. So I think we should just listen to that real quick. All right, here we go. You hear that?
There's blood in the streets, it's up to my ankles. She's blood in the streets, it's up to my knees. She's blood in the streets, the town of Chicago. She's blood on the rise, it's following me. Just about to break of day. son of fantastic LA. Black screens the brain and chop off the fingers. Blood will be born in the birth of a nation. Blood is the rose of mysterious union. Dead blood in the streets, it's up to my ankle. Blood in the streets, it's up to my knee. Blood in the streets, the town of Chicago. Blood on the rise is following me.
Right. That was pretty sweet, right?
It's always funny. I get used to listening to like Matthew's versions of songs, so I forget that that's not how the original actually plays out. You know, I get used to listening to that ideal version. That's just
Yeah.
all the good parts strung
You got to
together.
listen to the real Peace Frog because it's disappointing.
Yeah.
But you can listen to this perfect version at the library.
Right.
How's your setup, Grant?
I think it's good. I'm ready to let it rip and adjust the levels as it goes. I would love to play something off the turntable immediately after. I just have to reconnect a couple chords, but listen to this. Okay, I have to change my settings here in the little box. Sorry. Device settings. Good. Okay.
I feel love. Yeah.
Are you queuing up the next one, Graham?
You muted, Graham.
His settings are still off. Graham, your mic's not on. It's on your input.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll need the switch, but there you
Talk
go.
about myself just for half a minute, and then I'm going to play something else with a brief introduction.
We should talk about also how the we sort of mentioned it with the Mystic Country stuff, but like the disco dance aspect of the late 70s stuff where people were stepping outside their usual genre, maybe sort of trying to cash in, but also some of them are really cool.
There's a Dance with Dolly record right here. Dolly Parton doing the
yeah,
disco.
Yeah,
there
yeah.
was the Disco Dolly stuff. There was Disco Stone stuff. There was that Tony Joe White song, I Get Off on It.
Yeah.
I mean, that swamp rock guitar that he was already known for is already super funky and good. And then he made like a pretty good disco song that's pretty funny too. And then that arpeggiator stuff we were talking about, Eminence Front by The Who, and a lot of other, like the later stuff where they sort of, I guess, I don't know what you'd say, they're off a little more off the mainstream radar, but they're still experimenting and trying new things. He was finding a lot of great stuff like that. Yeah, and so much of it is really good, but then it either gets written off, oh, that's not their golden years, but he was finding really great gems and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah.
And I think like he loved bringing that stuff out into the light to be like, hey, you don't need to be ashamed that you made a disco crossover. Like that's some of your best stuff.
Yeah. I know Kenny Loggins. They don't let anyone hold that orb.
I think John Marks might be on this, and he might remember there was one time when Seward Cafe had like a competition where they asked people to make mixtapes for them. And of course, Matthew like used to work at the Seward Cafe. But at this point he wasn't working there anymore, but we were like, oh, let's submit a mixtape. And so Matthew filled it with like all kinds of like weird disco crossover. There was a Link Ray doing a cover of that song Fever, but like disco style. There was Willie Murphy and the Bees doing this song, It's Gonna Be a Disco Christmas. And like it was almost like Matthew was kind of trolling the staff of the Seward Cafe because he knew they weren't gonna like sit through an entire like mixtape of disco music, but I think he still was just like, deal with it, guys, it's out there, it's good. If you would just like strip away some of your assumptions, you could enjoy this.
Probably would go over really well now, just 10 years or 15 years later, you know.
A lot of like Sewer Cafe, like music, like all of that discography was sort of like, I just want to bring fuck with my friends, right? You know, and like Matthew was really doing that, like just like culture jam, something, you know, like in a way that would be interesting to me and always really fun. And I was insecure of like talking shit about people's music, you know. So he kind of like he had my back.
When did Matthew work for the Seward Cafe?
Probably, maybe Mike, you would know. It was shortly out of high school, maybe, or
yeah, probably from '96 to 98 or 9, I bet. Probably 9, maybe even 2000. Worked there.
Yeah, I think it was definitely in the late 90s because that's where I met him. We were like just early 20s at that point.
he was really proud. He got to make breakfast for Jonathan Richman once. And he would talk about that all the time. That was the pinnacle.
Yeah, he was really good at that job too. I would go in and get breakfast from him quite a bit.
He loved his tahini.
Nutritional yeast.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Huevos Rancheros kind of was his jam. Yeah.
So has anybody heard this group that he and I used to listen to called East River Pipe? This is a guy named, his last name was Cornhog, and he is from Queens. And he put out some very fun stuff. I mean, several albums, but one album I can't think of the title of it. It was good, and it was sort of almost a middle 50s sounding, the audio part of it. But Ivy, I wondered, did he ever talk about East River Pipe? No, I guess.
I mean, if I heard the music, I would probably recognize it.
Yeah, you would.
I definitely didn't have Matthew's, brain for keeping all of these details in my head.
Yeah.
The link to the collection is in the chat. I don't recall that name, but there's 7,500 plus things on this list. So yeah, let's all dig into it and see if we can find East River Pipe.
Graham, are you ready?
I'll do it right now.
All right, Graham.
Yeah, look,
Right.
if it's okay, yeah, James, anybody, this is, I'm getting like feedback from myself,
Do you have
but
two devices?
yeah,
It's clean now.
it's clean. Okay. Yeah, so this is just a particular song that Matthew liked a lot, but as a point of reference in the collection, he was a big fan of Francois K produced material. Maybe that was mentioned at some point, but this is a Francois K produced record, which is a little bit rare, and it's a really good jam by Michael Wilson, who, it's a little mysterious. He's a little bit sort of off the radar, off the record. I don't know if it's like Michael Wilson, like maybe there was just a few songs by him or something. But yeah, let me play it, and good. I think you'll enjoy it. Here it comes.
What a situation. Dangerous when you get down. So what you get on down with me, yeah. Say why don't you? Why don't you get on down with me, yeah. Anything you got to do, you let it show. All through this way you get down. Get on down with me, yeah. Say why don't you get on down with me, yeah. Say why don't you?
Yeah.
Have it, groove it to your body. Michael Wilson. Prelude Records.
Incredible.
Can you hear me now, Mike, Ivy, James, Steve, anybody,
You're
Kevin,
coming
Emily?
through.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
Switch my audio source here. Excellent. I had the other Do Your Do record. I mean, James, I defer to you. I could play that if you'd like. You also have it handy.
Yeah, I do. I can play that.
Okay,
So,
okay. Put the needle about 3/8 of the way through the song. I think you'll hit something good.
okay. Roger.
So Fever Zone Records production. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
another thing. The fact that all those Fever Zone things are on YouTube too, so people can listen to them.
Yeah, you want to drop that into the chat?
Yeah, I'm gonna put that into the chat. It's Wall Lamp is the YouTube channel. No, Lamp Wall. It's several or more releases on Matthew's. But James, you know the artist on Do Your Do. Who was that?
Oh dear.
Ivy knows.
I learned about it because there's people. This is kind of fun. There's people on Discogs trying to like crack the code of like what are all the mixes on here. So not only are they wondering who Marvel and Gino are, but people are also like, throwing out there like who these artists are, because all the releases have kind of a twist on the name. Like it doesn't say Peace Frog, it says Blood Street. So it's hard to know unless
I think that's Rise, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I think you're right. One of these ones is Rise on both sides.
The other side is Rise, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Rise on both sides.
Oh, Rise on both sides. Okay.
Was it 1/3 in or 2/3 in? Graham?
Oh, sorry. I was saying about 3/8 in. You'll get some good
3/8 in. Okay. There we go. Hope I do okay.
Oh, you got the wrong speed.
Take a chance on romance. Do your dance. Take a stand. People, take a chance on romance.
Is he scratching that?
It's up to you.
Scratchy scratch.
Here's the deal. Do what you feel. Do you do? It's up to you. People, here's the deal. Do what you feel. People, here's the sound. Get on down, do your thing, let it swing. People, here's the sound. Get on down.
So we are approaching 8:30. Yeah, so I just wanted to let everybody know that we will be coming to a landing here shortly. Yeah, so I mentioned Ivy in the chat about she was wondering if there's anything else to talk about. Didn't you say, Ivy, that he found this record because it had a great album cover, which is the kind of thing we're talking before, and now he would like find like as many copies as he could and give them out to buddies. This collection, there's like 5 copies in there of it.
Yeah.
It does have a really cool cover.
Yeah, well, and this guy Jerry Williams, he wrote songs that I think Bonnie Raitt and Eric Clapton performed and became famous with, but I don't think Jerry Williams ever became very famous himself. But Matthew got very into this record. The album art is actually by Jerry Williams. So Jerry Williams was like one of these kind of all-around guys who did it all. It's such a weird album cover where it's like a hand, but a finger's cut off, but maybe it's also kind of a spider.
Well, it's called Gone, and it's missing the middle finger.
Yeah.
And the middle finger is like a weird tarantula orifice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty twisted, trippy thing.
I couldn't remember what record it was, but there was one, the last time we went record shopping together, there was a record. He said, I can't believe we just found this. I just found this. Here, you have to buy this. And
Yeah,
it's that
totally.
record. I couldn't
Steven
remember
Flynn
which
have
one
it
it
too.
was. Yeah, he goes, this is really good. You're not only
was
going to
fun.
like this.
It was one of those things that he was like adamant about proselytizing. Like, you need to buy this. I'm going to buy every copy of it that I can find so that I make sure it gets out in the world. So now, yeah, Hennepin County probably has like 5 sealed copies of this same record, and it's really good.
Yeah, if somebody, if we end up circulating them or whatever, like we'll just keep re-upping it. It's never going to be out of circulation.
Yeah. One thing I feel like I got to mention is we haven't talked about James Brown, and it's not like we have to go into James Brown, but of course James Brown was very like foundational for Matthew, and like funk music was a big thing for him. And I just got to say, when James Brown died, Matthew and I went to the Apollo Theater up in Harlem. I think Matthew kind of commandeered the day, and I didn't realize this was happening until we were standing in line, but like we ended up in line to go see James Brown's body as it was lying in state in the theater. And it ended up, we were there all day long. We stood in this line all day, and we saw Daryl Hall come out of the Apollo Theater after viewing the body. Like, we saw all these other like music celebrities. It was an incredible day. And then finally it was getting dark. It was getting really cold. And they were like, okay, only one more group of people can get through here. And we were in the last group of people to get through the door. And we got to walk down the aisle of the Apollo, walk past James Brown's body, and walk out. And I just feel like that was another one of those kind of pinnacle moments. Like, I can't believe we get to do this. But that was part of why Matthew wanted to be in New York. I think for him, like, New York was just ground central for all of that music history that he was so into.
James, before you play a record, I had a post on Instagram, and a friend of ours from our old job said, Matthew Paulson, the man had one of the most impressive collections of vinyl I have seen. Such dedication, something that sort of sat with me. Such dedication. So glad that this amazing archive will enrich the lives of people in Hennepin County and beyond. I still have some cherished CD mixes from him. Did you guys talk about James Brown in the context of disco? Because disco as a genre to Matthew would include things like James Brown, with criteria that expanded to include funk, house, techno, and anything else, which often came from dark corners of society where people were just expressing their human joy. And I think this is what brought Matthew to disco. When he told me a long time ago, when he was 18 or so, that, or he was young and he was in a dark place and he found disco music. It's sort of parallel to the birth of some of these genres that he would include as part of disco. So I don't know. I just want to put that out there because I know we're at 3:30 a.m. or 8:30 Minneapolis time.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty evident that Matthew found, the beauty in like all the different styles of music out there. Yeah, this Jerry Williams record, I think, it's got a pretty deep emotional sound, a little bit different than what else we've been playing, but I think it makes sense too in the context of Matthew's ear. And yeah, so I just want to let everybody know as we're heading out tonight that these are programs that we do every month, and we do have a survey, and it would be fantastic if you could fill it out, because those surveys do help us continue with this programming. And I just want to thank you all for showing up and being here together and just kind of just sharing these stories and the space with each other. It's been really cool. And I hope that you all take advantage of this music collection. I mean, even if you're not in Minneapolis, you can listen on to Matthew's edits on YouTube. You can look at the list, and you can try to find some of those records yourself. Use that as a finding aid, a shopping list, if you will. But do come into the Central Library, come up to the third floor and check it out. We'd love to share it with you. So yeah, with that, I'm going to play an outro tune. It's called This Song, and it's from that Jerry Williams record that we were just talking about.
What must I do or say to try to explain the way I feel in this song? Oh, this song. I pulled down a star from above. If I thought it would prove my love for you in this song. Oh, this song. I know you're open to what I say. We're gonna be living together someday in this song. Never close that door in my face. I'm always gonna be hanging around your place in this song. Ooh, and I hope it makes you strong. Yes. Climb to the very top. or cheat and steal for your song. But it won't be long. I know you're on the move again. You're strong and you can take it. You're gonna make it, my friend, with your soul. Yeah, I love the way you sing that song. Wait just a minute. Don't you ever give it up. You got your hands on the golden cup. You've been down on the bottom. Ain't no way left but up. My friend, here it comes again. What can I do or say? Might make you wanna play your song. Oh, your song. Won't you play me your song? Please play me a song. Sing it loud. Sing it real strong.
Right.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. So great to see so many of you.
Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Please
Great
fill out
stuff.
the survey if you have a chance. Thank you for joining us, Stephen.